Hey all, how's it going? It's Luke here. My name is Luke, and today we are going to be looking at the idea that Banjo and Kazooie might actually be a romantic couple. There are points that goes against this, points that supports this. Now for those that don't know, Banjo and Kazooie are generally described as friends, and that's more or less it. We know that they live together and generally get along. Now, one thing that is worth noting is that Kazooie is usually the more aggressive character, whereas Banjo, on the other hand, is more of the polite character. However, Kazooie isn't aggressive to Banjo. We're going to start with the evidence that goes against this idea, then we're going to look at the evidence that supports this idea, and then we'll reach some kind of conclusion. Kind of. The most obvious reason why they're not a couple is because they're never described as one. They are referred to as friends, and there's often quite a lot of innuendo humour in the Banjo-Kazooie games. But this humour rarely, if at all, suggests that Banjo and Kazooie are in some kind of romantic relationship. Well, that's mostly at least. There might be one or two things we'll come back to later on, but for the most part at least, there is no suggestion of it. Like, there are characters that we know the relationships of within the first few minutes of seeing them, for instance, and we see them nowhere near as much as we do Banjo and Kazooie. Another reason why they might not be a couple is because around the release date of Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, the latest Banjo-Kazooie game, there was an in-character Q&A that some of the people from Rare did, where they were taking questions and answers from their fans. Rare is the company that the Banjo-Kazooie curators were working with at the time. One of the fans said that they found Kazooie attractive, and Kazooie responded suggesting that she only finds Breegulls attractive. A Breegull is the type of bird that Kazooie is. The reason why this can go against the idea of Banjo and Kazooie being a couple is because Banjo is a bear and Kazooie is a Breegull bird. I do want to point out that I actually can't prove if this has happened or not though. I found this Q&A from an account that reports all the facts they can find about Banjo-Kazooie. When I click on the source they provide, it takes me to the Banjo-Kazooie Facebook page, but I can't find anything on that Facebook page about the Q&A. From what I could work out though, they do seem to be pretty legit when it comes to reporting facts about the games. And I'm not sure who on the Rare team were doing these Q&As. It could have been the people who were working on the games, or it could have been some other members from the Rare team. This kind of leads into my next point, where the Rare Twitter account said that Banjo and Kazooie are not a couple. However, this might not necessarily debunk it. So a fan was asking if Banjo and Kazooie are a couple, and Rare responded saying that they are not a couple. However, this was in 2015. It's hard to know for sure who at Rare was writing this, whether it was someone who had anything to do with the Banjo-Kazooie games or not, I don't know. Looking at the time range that these tweets were made in, I think it probably wasn't someone who worked on the Banjo-Kazooie games who was suggesting that they're not a couple. I also don't know if it's more than one person who writes tweets on the Rare account, I just don't know for sure. I would also like to point out that one of the main, if not the main curators of Banjo-Kazooie is someone called Greg Mayles. Greg Mayles wrote the original description for Banjo and Kazooie, and part of the description reads as such: Banjo has found life to be just too interesting for its own good since he found himself adopted by Kazooie. This could suggest that Banjo is Kazooie's adopted son, but I noticed that the word adopted is in quotation marks, which could suggest he was being metaphorical and not literal. If we speculate a little bit more, we can see the name Banjo on the house that they live in, but not Kazooie, suggesting that it is primarily Banjo's house. Furthermore, when Kazooie goes too far with being a rude person, Banjo would often call her out on it, and Kazooie would back down, sometimes even apologising. Not always, mind you, but sometimes. And I would expect that to be the other way around if Banjo is the adopted son of Kazooie. So it's for these three reasons that I think Greg was being metaphorical and not literal. And finally, we have this moment from Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge. So this mole guy asks Banjo if he's taking a stroll with his bird, and Kazooie responds saying that she's nobody's bird. While in this case Kazooie is an actual bird, just like Banjo is an actual bear, the word bird can also be used to describe a female or someone's girlfriend. I think it can be considered an inappropriate term. Because Kazooie responded saying that she's nobody's bird, this could imply that she's not Banjo's girlfriend either. She's probably not denying that she's an actual bird. I guess one could say that she's implying that she's not an actual female, though she is often referred to as a she, her. So I guess it could narrow it down to her implying that she's not Banjo's girlfriend. So does this debunk the idea of Banjo and Kazooie being a romantic couple? Not necessarily. One, it could imply that she's not Banjo's girlfriend. It could also be saying that referring to someone as a bird can be insulting, and she doesn't want to be referred to as such. That concludes our evidence against the idea of them being a couple. Now let's look at the evidence that could potentially suggest this. I know this is all overly speculation, but I still think it's cool to talk about. So yeah, without further ado, let's go with the evidence for it. While I could point out little things like the fact that Kazooie is, very rarely, if at all, mean to Banjo despite being mean to everyone else, and the fact that this idle animation is probably Kazooie making a genuine effort to carry Banjo and nothing more than that, we are going to start this section by, once again, looking at social media. We are going to start by looking at the Playtonic Games Twitter account. For those who don't know, Playtonic Games is a studio consisting of former Rare members who worked on games such as Banjo Kazooie, Conker's Bad Fur Day, games like that. One of the tweets on the account says that Kazooie is always pregnant. It's caused a lot of confusion amongst fans talking about what exactly the tweet means by this, and some people might think that Banjo is the reason why she is pregnant all the time. What is important to note though is that someone called Daily is the one who's doing the tweets on the social media account, and she didn't work on the Banjo Kazooie games. She was a fan of Banjo Kazooie, and still is I presume, and then came to work with Playtonic later on. But it still gets attention given the fact that this is an official Twitter account here that she is posting on. But we're going to move up the scale of evidence supporting they being in a relationship by going to something a little bit more direct. So when Banjo Kazooie was being created, I think it was made by a small group of people working at Rare, like I mentioned before, and these people consist of Greg Mayles, who was the game director I think, Steve Mayles, who is Greg Mayles' brother, who did the character design, the character art, so he created Banjo, he created Kazooie, and a lot of the other characters we see in Banjo Kazooie and other Rare games. And we also have Grant Kirkhope, who is the game's soundtrack creator. The list goes on really. Sometimes Steve Mayles, the character creator of Banjo Kazooie, will interact with artwork of Banjo and Kazooie being a romantic couple. First and foremost, this is of course a creator showing fan art of the video game that they worked on, but some fans choose to see it as validation almost that Banjo and Kazooie are a couple. Like I said, I think this is nothing more than a creator sharing fan art of characters that they created, but it's still nice for those who support the idea of them being a couple to see official acknowledgement of such artwork. And this is a similar story with Grant Kirkhope, the soundtrack composer of the Banjo Kazooie games as well. There have been one or two instances when he's directly shared such artwork with some of the other creators, like Steve Mayles for instance. There was this other game called Toe Jam and Earl that wasn't made by Rare, and the official account made a post asking if they are just friends or if they are a married couple. A user made a comment saying to delete this, and Grant Kirkhope responded saying, "Ha, but you love it really." While it was obviously meant in a humorous way, I say this for another reason as well. 2-3 years ago when I first saw this post, and you can still view likes on Twitter, I remember going through all the comments on that post and seeing who gave it a like, and I didn't see a lot of the responses get a like from Grant Kirkhope. Which did get a like from Grant Kirkhope though was one of the comments supporting the idea of Banjo and Kazooie being a couple. Now I technically can't prove this for a couple of reasons. One, the comment has been deleted, maybe the account got suspended, I'm not sure. But the other reason is because of course Twitter has disabled the ability to view likes on posts, so I technically can't prove it. This is probably nothing more than curators engaging with a community about a game that they worked on, but I thought I'd bring it up either way. I also don't know if it's one of those things that only Greg Mayles, let's say, can come to the conclusion of, because there have been some posts where people have been asking lore questions about Banjo and Kazooie, and sometimes they will get referred to Greg Mayles. On to the next point is the fact that Banjo and Kazooie sleep together. Now, before you go into the comment section correcting me about this, saying that, oh, actually they're sleeping separately, in the new game you can see it. If we actually look at the save files, we have 3 actions that Banjo and Kazooie are doing. One of them is sleeping, the other one is cooking, and the other one is playing video games together. Now, when we see the sleeping one, we only see Banjo sleeping with his backpack. However, if we interact with it, then Banjo would wake up and Kazooie would pop out of the backpack. Now, of course, she was sleeping in the backpack. not like outside the backpack with him or anything like that. So I'm not sure if it's quite the same, but I thought I'd bring it up either way. The next point I'd like to raise is that they have been living together for quite a while, it would seem, possibly 10 years, give or take, and presumably still are living together. Now, of course, many people live together long term without it meaning anything. You know, sometimes it could mean that they are in a relationship, other times it could just mean that they're not. But this does lead nicely into my next point, the point that I think is quite interesting to consider before we come to the conclusion of this video. I'm not sure if this is deliberate or not. This very probably wasn't. But if we look at every other character that lives together in the Banjo Kazooie games, everywhere from Banjo Kazooie to Banjo Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, they are usually family of some kind. Let me explain what I mean by this. We have Boggy, and who does Boggy live with? He lives with his wife and his 3 children. Let's take Bottles for instance. We see that Bottles lives with his wife and has 2 children. Wait, no, or was it 3 children? 2, 3 I can't remember. We also have Bully and Bill, who is a fox, living with Dilberta, who is a rat, and they are also a couple. This also confirms that interspecies relationships are a thing in Banjo Kazooie, so why can't Banjo a bear be in a relationship with Kazooie a bird? The point I'm making is that no one lives together in the Banjo Kazooie series unless they are family members of some kind, whether it's like a parent and children relationship or if it's like a husband and wife relationship. And when I look at it like that, I can't think why would Banjo and Kazooie be the only ones living together who aren't family of some kind. And as one is a bear and the other one is a bird, then I don't think they could be related, so chances are they are married. So does this in effect confirm that Banjo and Kazooie are a couple? This probably isn't deliberate, this probably wasn't the game creators setting out the world and rules of the Banjo Kazooie universe, but it is something interesting that I noticed, and I thought I'd pick up on. And this finally leads me into my conclusion. You may have noticed that sometimes I might back up one of my points with the opposing point that goes against the point I'm making. I know that some people either love the idea of these two being a couple or hate the idea of these two being a couple. And I also want to be careful to not sound like one of those internet guys who thinks they know everything or whatever. I don't. I'm just a guy who really likes the Banjo Kazooie games. You know, like the Banjo Kazooie games are my happy place. I really like the social media platforms of the creators. That's also a happy place of mine. I just think they're cool people and I really like the games they do. So, you know, I thought I'd share some of the things that I picked up on really about the games, about the community. Now, given that we have both points to suggest that they aren't a couple and points to suggest that they are a couple, do I actually think that they are a couple? And to be honest, I think it could go either way. I think because there is enough points to both, I think it's open for you to choose how you see them really. If you like the idea of them being a couple, then yeah, that could be totally canon. If you don't like the idea of them being a couple, then that's also could potentially be totally canon. One thing I do find interesting is when someone on social media might approach Greg Mayles with a thought about the Banjo Kazooie lore, he might say that it's actually like this and not like this. So it's clear that there have been some lore points that Greg has already thought out about the Banjo Kazooie universe. Whether this is one of them or not, or whether he hasn't even given it some thought, I really don't know. But there are of course some other points where Greg may have not even thought about. There was this one time where a fan asked how did Banjo and Kazooie meet, and he actually admitted he doesn't know, so he can't let it open for fans to interpret how they like. And I'd like to think it's a similar case with Banjo and Kazooie's relationship as well, whether they are in a relationship or not. It's never been stated that they are a couple, and there aren't too many layers when it comes to like lore and backstories and all of that. They are making a platformer game and not a romance game. But given the fact that they have had multiple chances to either confirm or debunk the idea, and they have even engaged with the idea, then who knows, maybe they'd like to leave it open to fans to see what they like about their relationship. And I honestly think that's the best way to go about it. If you debunk the idea, then you are going to upset people who do like the idea, and if you confirm the idea, then you are going to upset people who don't like the idea. So I think it really is one of those things that's best left up for the viewer to see what they like, really. Now, of course, if anyone watching this happens to be one of the creators of Banjo Kazooie, then you are of course invited to share any thoughts that you have from this. You don't have to debunk or confirm anything, but I just think it's fair to have the invitation there as I'm speculating about something you created. And yeah, that's pretty much all. Thank you for watching. My name is Lukit, and the next video of mine you watch, I'll see you there. Goodbye, everyone.